Hello, everyone, and welcome to You Matter Talks. And today I am super excited to have a very special guest, Tziporah. Hello, how are you?
I'm well. How are you? I'm over here, in all honesty, finagling technology. I'm like, oh, I want to share our talk now. So sorry.
Yeah, no, definitely. Go ahead and make sure we're all connected. Oh, there we go. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we've got it. It's so funny because I'm like, yeah, I'm also looking at the tech piece because something just went kind of awry over on my side, but I know we're still live. So, okay.
Right.
So, welcome. How are you doing?
My goodness. Okay, I'm back. All right. I'm here. I'm really well. I'm excited because I'm out on my garden patio. I thought I'd take everyone, you all outside with me today. And yeah, I'm going on, I think, 8 weeks. I lose track of time. 8 weeks, 9 weeks of shelter in place down here in Southern California.
Yeah.
But I have a house to myself right now, and I'm feeling as an introvert and a creator, I feel very well taken care of. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? I know we ended up not too sure if we actually had COVID or not, but we ended up at a doctor's office because my daughter had an emergency, and a few days later got like intensely um, sick in terms of like the cough, actually, not much else, but like really rampant cough. So we isolated pretty early. We isolated around the second week of March. And so and then right while we are in isolation, the whole emergency things went through. And so, yeah, so I didn't even leave to like go do groceries until this last week.
Yeah.
And then it was such a weird experience. And I'm not like I'm an ambivert, so it's been an interesting experience for me, right? It's like my introvert is well taken care of. In some ways, I'm at home. I'm a mom though, so like, and I have a high special needs child, so she likes to like be literally physically kind of attached to me a lot. So it's been interesting, kind of trying to be mom, still have like, my me time, still trying to, do my work and my passion. Like I consider my work kind of my second baby. Like, it's kind of it was my second birthing after her or before her technically. But yeah, they're both my babies and I've never been able to choose between them. So, but that's what happens, I think, when you know your passion.
Yeah, I can relate. It's since all of this, I've actually gone full force with online webinars and programs, and I was on hiatus for a bit due to just a lot of self-care needed for me, taking care of myself. And when I always look at relationship, actually say it's like my work, my dharma, right? I call it is my dharma is that's my primary relationship besides myself.
Yeah.
Like I could not imagine in some way, shape, or form. Like it doesn't have to have a certain identity or structure, but
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form, sharing this expression of me in the world in service.
Yeah, I love that
I
you brought
get it.
that up because I mean, that's so true. Like when I talk about relationships, people immediately think relationship with someone else external to them. And it's like, no, there's a relationship with yourself. There's a relationship with like your passion, your heart, your work, your food, your your children. We like relationships are really the foundation of our life. And there's so many ways to explore different relationships. Like I know for myself, before I really, well, I guess I discovered it so I was a doula when I was pretty young, like very, very young. I was a doula for over 20 years. And so I didn't do it full time, but I guess I had a taste of what my passion was in that work. Like that was work that I just, I mean, it felt so good. It didn't feel like work, right? And I felt so connected and I felt so like there was just like such a deep connection there that did so much for my soul. And I know that as I continued that work on the side and did my corporate work full time, it sort of became more and more and more clear how uncomfortable I actually was in the corporate world, how not fulfilling it was, how disconnecting it was for me. And, you know, I think that's important to bring up for people, because I mean, sometimes people are kind of like, you know, why am I not fulfilled, and they can't figure it out. And sometimes it's just that they haven't dropped into like their passion.
Yeah.
Not that you have to do it full time. It could be part time. It could be that you're passionate about painting, you know, and you pull out a canvas once a week.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, yes. And one of the things we were talking about before we went live was this idea of knowing that we have the ability to explore. Because I was similar. I was in corporate, but I was working this 9 to 5 job, and I was a competitive bodybuilder, which was a passion of mine. But I wasn't really connected to my body. I wasn't connected to, I'm going to say more of my felt sense, like my feeling body, my passion. Like I was just running on edge, and I was miserable in my job. And 2 things happened during that time. I had someone come up to me and they're like, I will help you in 6 months. Like in 6 months, I will have you out of that 9 to 5 job. And I followed that lead because I had that invitation, right? He kind of gave me permission. Like that was permission, like, holy shit, I can do this.
It's possible.
It was like something is possible. And I think if we just know that, like, it is possible, we don't have to sign something in stone. Like you just said, like painting, art, right? We can try something, whatever that is, the way we communicate with someone sexually, art, what we teach. And it's okay to mess up too. Like it doesn't have to be perfect, right?
Mess
Yeah.
up, evolve, shift, change. I mean, oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I remember the first few years of my business, I mean, I didn't want to put up a website because I kept evolving what I in my own teaching so quickly. And I'm like, wow, if I put anything up, it's like not going to be valid in a year or two. And then I just stopped really caring. Then it went up, and it wasn't always valid, but it didn't really matter. It didn't affect my business all that much. You know, but you're right, it's the same in relationships. It's like in all of our relationships. And you know, we can always be honest about it too. I mean, as a teacher, I was always like, I'm learning and growing. What I teach you this week, I may not even think is true in 3 years from now. You know, it like I'm going to evolve with you, you know, and I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. And in relationships, you know, we can do the same too. We can be like, you know, I really want to explore this. And, you know, can we explore this? And really like, you know, enter in with agreement of curiosity, and enter in with an agreement of, you know, we're going to just really communicate through this, and how's this going to feel? And it's okay if like something doesn't feel good. Right. I mean, yeah, because we were talking about, you know, how, you know, how people perceive our lives, how we perceive our lives, and then also just how many people that we've met that aren't even aware of the sort of limitless possibilities that they can have around intimacy, relationships, sexual intimacy. It's such a big, huge, wide world that like personally, I feel like I'll be discovering for the rest of my life. Like, I don't feel like there's even an end to it. I don't know how that feels for you, but
yeah. Well, I love that word discovery. You know, one of the things that I tell my clients is the biggest pitfall for any relationship is when we have the idea that we or our partner or partners are going to stay the same every day for the rest of our life. And yeah, and I will say, like, that is, if I look at the world outside of my bubble, right?
Yeah.
Is that tends to be something very common.
Yeah.
Get married, lock on to this idea, this is how we are. And I say, you know, wake up every day and ask your partner or even your family, just ask, what is new for you today? Yeah. Tell me something that's different for you today. So we're entering in a relationship that curious, discovering, like we want to discover something new. And that piece around asking, I find it makes it feel a bit safer.
Yeah.
It gives an invitation, because for you and I, like we talked about, again, like you mentioned, like how people perceive, how we perceive our own life. And so for me, it could be really easy to have these tough conversations,
Totally.
like, right? And for many, it's like, wow, like even that word discovery or like, I'm going to be different tomorrow. I don't even know how to approach that conversation.
True.
So how to make it safe, right?
That, I mean, for me looking back, I mean, it's easy now, but it wasn't easy when I started. Like, it was terrifying when I started. Like, it's very hard for people to imagine this, but I used to be very shy, and it was very hard for me to talk to people. I was very afraid of what people would think, of their opinions. I was very afraid of being abandoned, rejected, like literally do anything just to keep people in my life, whether they were healthy relationships or not. Because I was just so carrying so much trauma still, right? And I know when I was sort of asked to step into these conversations, was like, whoa, like I'm not even having these conversations with people after I'm with them for years. And, and I was starting to contemplate the idea of having these conversations with people like immediately. Like, I'm not going to date you for 3 months and like hope to find out some of this, or like a year or 2 years. Like, I want to know right off the bat. And that was a really scary thing, but oh my gosh, so amazing. Well worth the effort.
Yes, right. The time that we have spent, and now we know, we'll pass this on to the viewers. Yes. For me, I had to get kind of shocked, right? Shaken up, because I was the same way. When I grew up, I would take 0 on oral reports because I was scared shitless to get up in front of a classroom. I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to be criticized. But in the late 90s, I had a health opportunity, I call it, in my bodybuilding career, where I crashed and I woke up one day and I could barely walk. I put on 30 pounds in 48 hours. And it was in that moment that I was forced to feel the most physical discomfort and pain and emotional discomfort and pain that I had felt my entire lifetime. And I was 28. And it was that moment that I was like, holy shit, like I've just spent 28 years of my life not feeling, right? Not asking those questions, not calling in what I want in my life. And so I'm a radical in anyway, like if I want change and something shocks me like that, I'll just jump into it, because now I know how the difference, right? I have the two sides of the scale. And so I ended up moving. I sold everything I owned. I moved to the Swiss Alps. I'm crazy. And I didn't even know where I was going. I moved to the school, cows with the big bells in my backyard. But it was that period that I actually became celibate for 7 years, because I was just like, wow, if my relationships that I want aren't showing up the way that I want, like we're arguing, or the sex isn't good, or it's just not the experience I want to have.
Yeah.
I need to do that work on myself. And for me, it meant totally pulling away and focusing on more of a spiritual growth and developing a relationship with my body, mind, sex, and spirit. But I'm sharing that as well because that was challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it also we have to be a hell yes. Like I knew in that moment that no one was going to do that for me. No one was, right? You get this. It's like no one was going to change. No one was going to drag me somewhere. I had to take the steps to get clear, to take the classes, to heal, to do my own inner work. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you want the hell yes partnerships, depending on, your relationship structures. Yeah. It comes from the inside out. Like it's so true. And I know I've met people over the years who are like, oh, if you tell me that it starts with me, like, and it's like, it does though. Like there's no kind of way around that. It really does, because how we put ourselves out there and how we are willing to live and how we are responding and how we have a relationship with our body affects our relationships with everybody, and it's very hard to have that super juicy, amazing relationship that you want if, you're still carrying a lot of stuff that's not working for you. And I mean, I call it my breakthrough, not my health event, but my breakthrough. And same thing, around the same age, actually, 27. And yeah, it was like the same way. It was like, wow, like what have I been doing? Like, I was numb and I had no idea I was numb. I was numb to my body. I was numb to my feelings, but I didn't know that until, I went through a full PTSD thing, like full on felt nothing, like felt like someone dropped me down a big, deep, dark hole. And it was in that like hole that I realized like I really hadn't been feeling, like, because all of a sudden I had this desire to feel and was like, wow, I haven't really been feeling things. Like I haven't really been present with myself. I haven't been present with really other people. I mean, but then again, I mean, the story that we're kind of talking about, I'm sure that there's lots of people watching this feeling very similarly or going to have a similar awakening because we're not taught how to do that. I don't meet many people that have grown up in an environment where they're encouraged to really feel, to really be present, to really know their bodies, to really work on themselves versus pleasing everyone around them. It's kind of ingrained in our culture.
Yeah, we're not, and we're not taught how. So I find we have these conversations, you got to feel, you got to be present, and people just like, yeah, but how the fuck do I do that?
That's not me. Right?
Like, really? So on that, I want to share a story, if I may. So when it comes to feelings, I have this story that always comes to me, that feelings are our friends and our allies. And so imagine you're sitting in a house and you get a really loud pound at the door, and you answer the door, and it's like rage is at the door, and rage is in flames. And rather than slamming the door on rage, which is often what we do because we're taught it's wrong, or we're taught it's scary and it's bad to feel it, is what if I could just stand in the doorway and not do anything? Like, I'm not telling rage they're wrong. I'm not telling them that they have to change. I just stand there, and eventually the rage is just like, what the hell is this person doing? Like, they're not scared of me, but they get confused. But then that rage starts to soften to something like fear. And then the longer you stand there, they start to be like, oh, curious. And this person wants to know more about me. And then I always say, well, invite fear in for tea. Why not? And then, they're questioning, they're curious, and then they might just start to become a little scared. But the emotional experience starts to soften more and more in our nervous system, to eventually there's a curiosity that comes in the door and softens enough to maybe that we're actually sitting on our couch having tea and biscuits, or beer, whatever you prefer, with what was rage, but is now sadness. And now it's a core emotion that is open enough for us to go into. And when I can sit with my emotion that shows up in my body as sensation, because that's the communication of our body, is now I can, so that's the stillness, that's the presence, that's the feeling. Now I can feel, or I can track the feelings, because from that rage to fear to anger to sadness, right? Like, they feel completely different physiologically in our body. And so, like, it's like even a simple practice like that, and that just means maybe being still for 5 minutes. Totally. And tracking that rather than running, right? Typically we go into that fight, flight, or freeze response, but can we just be there? And don't make yourself be there for 30 minutes, but what, maybe 3 to 5 minutes.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, you can expand that. I mean, it can be, like, I'm just going to let myself experience this for just like as long as feels all right for you in that moment. And that might expand. I know that I've had feelings where I do, I just go and I'm with them for like a good 20, 30 minutes, as I let them kind of soften and unlayer. And, sometimes I end up having tea with a younger part of myself, or a part of myself that I rejected many years ago, or a part of myself that, maybe I was told was there and I believed it and didn't want to look at it, or looked pretty disturbing, and then that softens. And then too, you may come into the realizations like, wow, I'm having this feeling with this situation or with this person or whatever is going on, but really this is just a really unheard part of me that got scared or lost or trapped or repressed a long, long, long time ago. And, it's actually not so much even about the situation that I'm currently in, which is always intriguing as well.
Yes, it's endless, right? It's like infinite. It's amazing. And then, and bringing this, what we're talking about, like into intimacy or our sex life, right? If we look at what we're speaking into as a softening, because if we're living with this armoring, we're living with these old aspects of ourselves, and that's how we're acting and responding to our partners, right, or family. Now imagine that we're creating space for the softening. That means I'm going to be more available for deeper, soulful sexual connection. It
Totally.
means I'm going to be more available for the communication, or the type of communication or intimacy I want in the way that people talk to me. It
Yeah.
means that I'm going to know more of what I want and what I need, and even feel more confident in saying that. So I just want to link that for people, right? Because it is like we are in relationship all of the time.
Totally.
Like, right? We talked about our jobs, not just another human being, but I find what we're talking about is really opening up to this idea. I mean, it's my perspective, but idea of being in relationship with existence, like every breathing moment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm like when I talk to people, they're like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I teach intimacy with life."
Like,
They're like,
what?
"What?" Yeah, right. And it's like, yeah, that is what it is. But it's interesting when you say like this soften, because what was sort of arising for me is like these old beliefs I know that I had, and old beliefs that I still see when I'm out, like business networking, things like this, about women and men, actually across the gender spectrum, around softness and vulnerability being weak or being exposing. And it's like one of the most interesting things that I see daily in people, because when I see people actually go into their softness and they go into their vulnerability, I actually see them as being stronger. They tend to be stronger in terms of their essence, in terms of their beingness, in terms of their alignment, in terms of what they're willing to ask for in relationships, give, receive, like boundaries, all of that. And yet, I think there's this preconceived notion still going around that this softness is somehow weak, or that we're going to be exposing ourselves in a way where we could get harmed. And I mean, sure, when we're honest about things, people may not like it. But I mean, for myself and in many of my clients, I see when we go into that, we just start naturally attracting people that are also able to be in that realm with us. And they're not usually going to be the people that are harsh on us, or going to be judging us for what you want and what you need. So there is a transition that happens.
Yeah.
Sort of out with the old, in with the new, or some people will shift with you. But it's yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, because I think there is a real misconception about that being somehow weaker.
Yeah. What came to mind when you shared that piece was how often and how I was going to say easy, but I'm going to change that. I'm going to say comfortable. The comfortably uncomfortable, it's a weird phrase, but I know you know what I'm talking about, is that I've seen so many people, and I've been there in my past, of not speaking up vulnerably because we're scared we're going to lose something. However, if I'm not coming into a state of vulnerability, which to me leads to honesty with compassion, but real honesty, because I could be firm in my vulnerability.
Totally.
But if I don't do that, the people I'm with or person I'm with truly doesn't know me.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's not a quality relationship. So that's something to ponder, to think about. It's like, is that really a quality relationship if I'm not actually really sharing from this deep, vulnerable, honest place?
Mm-hmm.
What's the quality of the relationship anyway? Are these people really knowing me?
Yeah.
And to me, that's not even nothing less than quality, and someone knowing me is worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, as we, I mean, yeah, it's so interesting because I mean, I see that a lot too. I see a lot of people wearing a lot of masks, hiding a lot of things about themselves because they have judgments about it, or they feel that other people are going to judge them or criticize them. And it's kind of like, well, if I can just like not let them see this on this date, if I can just not let them, and it's 2 months, 3 months, and then it's so interesting because, if people are kind of doing the escalator relationship, they get married and sometime right after they get married, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, all of a sudden they're like, everything's like crashing and burning. And it's usually because all these masks have like fallen to the ground. Like they just cannot maintain hiding those parts of themselves that long. And, now their relationship is a mess. And it's like, how much time and energy could you have saved? Like just being really honest and upfront right off the bat. And then knowing that the person in front of you is really going to love you for everything that you already are, rather than potentially staying with someone and then they're going to find out things that are perhaps a deal breaker for them, you know? That just, I mean, to me, it's funny, but it's like literally when I was younger, it was like, this just feels like a time waster. Like, what am I doing spending time investing in relationships where I'm not being myself in them? It just didn't seem practical whatsoever. Um, Apparently I'm an effective.
Yes. And the importance I'm getting from is learn communication. I want to speak this to listeners, to viewers, is that like for me, I didn't grow up knowing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've studied for years and now, but it's just like there is value in learning these skills and these tools and these practices. I don't think either one of us are saying that you're going to go in and not stumble or know exactly what to do. I mean, like I have blueprints and tools and steps and I still fumble. But just reminder to wherever people choose to go is to remember the importance of learning, and just know, like, especially in today's world, right? There's so many places to get these skills and practices and learn. And the importance of that.
It's so accessible. I mean, I look at like when I started wanting to learn about, some of these things. And like, I remember I grew up in the interior of BC. So, there wasn't big bookstores, things like that. We didn't have yoga places. Like we didn't have any of that. And, like I remember like ordering, Margaret and Ann's Sexuality book, like I was 19, I'm like ordering it. I ordered, I think a book on yoga, right? And I started learning this stuff from like textbooks kind of thing, like books. And then just trying to put it into play myself. Whereas like now, like you can just go Google like, nonviolent communication. I mean, it's like there's that information is so out there that I mean, really at this point, I think most people have access to it, which I think is amazing. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about the internet. I mean, it just totally, it, gives us all, no matter where we are in the world, because we may not have access to things because of the laws in that area, or we may not have access to things because of poverty, but if you can literally just get an internet connection or get access to the internet, a library, something like that. I mean, depends what you might be looking at, but
yes.
we really can find that information anywhere. And then it's just like, how can you just take just a little chunk, start digesting it, start processing it, start practicing it. Does it work? Does it not work? And just start playing with, like, I always say this to people, I'm like, the most like curious mind, super valuable skill, and the ability to be playful in your life. And people are like, that's like, kids are playful. I'm like, yeah, adults are playful too. And it's like when you see a kid learning something and they're not fettered by making a mistake or by tripping or falling, they're just like, whatever, they just tried a different way, and then they tried a different way, and they tried a different way, and it's fun, and it's enlightening for them, and it's it's a provocative, fun, engaging experience because there's just not judgment being put on themselves. It's just like they know what they want and they're going to figure out a way to do it. And I just think it's an amazing quality for people to bring into their own exploration as adults because there's such a lightness to it.
My partner and I were, I think it was just last night, I was just like, we need adult sandboxes. It's just like, because then we'd actually maybe remember to play, right? We'd bring that playfulness back. Yeah, for sure.
Understand.
Yeah, yes, totally. I have lots of it here. Come visit. Yes. When, something that I love to invite in with the play is if it feels really nervous, is tell someone you actually want to practice. Like, don't, like, this comes back to the vulnerability piece as well. It's like, don't pretend you have it all together. I even do this in the bedroom, right? So sexually, it's like, have a date where you're not trying new things unknowingly, but say, oh, like tonight we're going to try new things. And, your partner could be like, oh, I like that, I don't. And you're giving each other feedback, but make it a game.
Totally.
Like, have fun games, right? Make your communication a game, have a weekly sex play a game, sex sessions. And just, I think that takes the pressure off of us as well. When we just speak, well, I just want to play this game. I want to practice this with you. So I don't think it has to be that complicated.
No, it doesn't. And you're right. It does take, I mean, if both people agree, it just takes the pressure off. It's like, okay, we can kind of fumble and mess this up and whatever. And it's not going to be a big deal. It's just going to be part of the learning process or part of the discovery process. And yeah, sometimes, I mean, you'll do those. I mean, I know I've had play sessions myself where it's like, let's try this. And it's like, wow, how do we even make this happen? Like, okay, that's not working. That's not working. Wow, that's not working. Like,
and that does not feel anywhere near as good as I thought it would. So let's go over here. Yes.
The whole adventure can be so fun and you really get to know yourself and you get to know the person you're with. And it brings a newness into the relationship. I mean, I hear people talking about having to reignite their relationships, like they've gotten boring. And I'm like, if you can have this kind of energy, I mean, we're always constantly evolving and developing despite being, it's funny because there's kind of this saying, right, that, you should pick a partner and I don't know how it goes, but like, you can't change them. Right. Like, right. And I mean, I find it kind of a funny statement because it's like, no, you can't change them. But they will change regardless of what you want throughout your entire relationship, and so will you.
Yes.
I mean, when you really embrace that, and we're kind of coming a little full circle to what you said earlier, when we really embrace that and you just are willing to explore those new ideas and those thoughts and things like this without a lot of judgment, there's a lot of fun and just amazing, juicy experiences that can arise in play with yourself, in play and discovery with others, in life. I mean, just want, some people are like, oh, like I like, I've had this like fantasy. Oh my gosh, yeah. It has one client. It's like, I've had a fantasy of like wrestling my wife in a coconut oil. And like, we can't do it. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't do it? And I was like, go buy like a kiddie pool. Like, go get one of those. Like, I mean, they're cheap, man. Go get a kiddie pool. I mean, I don't know where you get that much coconut oil, but in Costco, maybe, whatever.
Yeah.
Warm it up because I don't know. Like, I was like, I might use something different than coconut oil just because it's so hard at room temperature.
Unless you're in a warm, sunny place, but yes.
Put a tarp down. And he was just like, no way. He's like, oh my gosh, I could actually do this. And then he was like scared about telling his wife. And then he told his wife and she's like, actually, that would be kind of fun. And yeah, it was just like amazing, right? Like, so, I mean, be wild and crazy and, give yourself, I think, an opportunity just to even imagine if there was a way to do it, a way to experience what you want to experience. Because I think, hope, that little hope or that little being open to possibilities is kind of like the seed. I think it's the seed for growth, period. Like what you were saying about your, your health opportunity.
Yeah, it was my seed for growth. Yes.
Your seed. There was like something there where you're like, there must be more.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing I believe that we can guarantee on is there's always more. There's
Yeah.
always more inside of us. Like who we think we are, who someone else thinks we are, is not even close to who we are. And
Yeah.
so I find if we can just move through life like that, whoa, discovery. And you said it. So we keep repeating that. It's like discovery, discovery, discovery. And yeah, opens up to willingness.
Yeah, totally. And I think not limiting yourself by what you see around you, like rather than going, oh, well, I've never seen any couple or any person really do that, but I think that there's more, but oh, maybe I'm, gonna talk myself down from that and just stay where I am now because I don't think it's possible because I haven't seen it. And it's so interesting. I noticed like when we kind of hit those places, how we can choose to kind of stay where we are, or we can kind of choose to keep moving forward. And if we do, I always find it very intriguing how all of a sudden you start inviting people into your life without even realizing it that have now already moved past that perceived boundary or sort of limit. And then you're like, oh, wow, like not only like is it possible I can see it in front of me in other people, but until you even sort of get to the place of opening up to it, you won't invite those people into your life. Sometimes you will. I mean, I've had many experiences like that where I call them my little angels through life, where they invited me into a greater possibility that I wasn't aware of. And then there's been a lot of times where that possibility didn't arise until I already open to it.
One of my old spiritual teachers, I remember them saying that when you feel and find the biggest fear inside of you, when something scares you, those are the doors you want to step through because guaranteed on the other side of that are going to be the biggest miracles. And I, to this day, that's all I've ever experienced. So maybe that's my drive. So it's like if something scares me, I'm just like, okay, how can I safely move through this because I'm not staying where I'm at? And so, if we're talking about like sexual exploration, is even if you don't know, like I think about people who just, maybe they're just so used to the norm, what they're in, they don't even have an idea, right? So this is where also research comes in, right? Like watch other people, watch if that's your thing in person, but in books, watch a documentary, watch educational pieces, like find what people are doing, right? Because then you'll be like, oh, okay, so maybe I'll try this, and you don't even have to know you like it, but just to start to spark that curiosity piece inside of us, right? It's just like, okay, I'm going to try, like the playfulness we're talking about. Well, I'm going to try this. Like we do it when we go to workshops and we get tossed into different things. And I've never done this. Well, I'm going to try it. And that's the only way we're going to know. Like that's how we know as children.
Yeah.
We have to do something to know if we like it or we don't like it. As long as there's consent and you're safe and you feel good, just try it. Miracles will happen.
Totally. Yeah. And there's so many resources for that stuff now too, right? Like, I mean, again, like kind of looking like back, years and years ago where you'd have to like find a community of people that were doing that, like that's a lot. Like my whole kinky side, like who knew, grew up, did not know that any of that, like I just like was like the weirdo, like, yeah, totally the strange bird that was like, oh, I wonder if that would be fun to be like tied up, or I wonder if that would be fun to tie someone up. And I had no idea that that was a community, that was even a possibility, really. And then it was, interesting because when I met people from bigger cities where there was communities, they're like, oh yeah, that's totally, there's like people that do that. I'm like, what? You know? And, there's always safe ways to sort of move into even just a little bit of discovery around it. And yeah, like, I mean, the internet, like, I mean, it's all on there now, right? I mean, you can join online communities that are into certain things and just explore. And you can be totally honest. I mean, we talked about that earlier about just being honest with people, even when you're exploring something different in a community and just being like, wow, I have no idea. I've never done this. I think I might like it, but I don't know if I will. You know, you can talk about what your worries are, what your sort of desires would be. And usually, you know, I find that you find people that will really connect with you with where you're at and sort of maybe even take you under their wing. And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
And it does all come back to vulnerability, right? Like, talk about it. Again, even in these places, you don't have to pretend like, oh, I got it going on and I know what I'm doing. And, or, you know, if you have a partner that is a little more conservative or a little more timid, rather than even proposing that you do something, just talk about it,
yes,
right? I find that if I can just clearly start to, wow, this is why I like it, or ask, like, if your partner likes something and you're just like, I don't like this, or I don't think I like it, right? Like, oh, how can you like that?
yeah,
Get curious about them, like make it not about you, but ask them, well, why do you like this?
yeah,
How does it make you feel? Because even in that, like, you start to open up the door, or we start to open up the door to intimate connection, which can then lead to more curiosity and the physical exploration. But talk is a great way to start.
absolutely. And then it's so funny because you might be having that conversation and they might say something about like how they think it's going to make them feel or like what the exciting bit about it is. And you might be like, oh, yeah, so interesting. I'm not interested in doing the thing that you first said, but you know what might be fun, right? And then you're bringing up an idea that you think might be fun. And they're like, oh, that might be fun too. And now you maybe have something that you can build on that has synergy. And yeah, I like what you said about it just being not so much a request from them, but a sharing of like what you want. Like, you know, this might be, you know, I don't know why, but I feel like this might be a really huge turn on. Or, you know, this, like, I keep having this idea about you and this is what you'd be doing. And it's like super sexy. And I don't need you to do that for me, but I just want you to know that like I have that, fantasy going on inside of me, or that would be really nice, or I just want to share that with you. And it's amazing just the amount of turn on and intimacy that's created just in that conversation.
That's where I was just going. Like, I was like, yes. I find like it's the most erotic thing for me and turn on, just to listen to what turns someone else on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. So yes, talk more.
Yeah, this is where consent gets sexy. I have so many male clients come to me and they're like, how do I like get better at consent? And it's not sexy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, consent is so sexy. This is where you get to sit there and use like one of your largest sex organs available and discuss what would be a turn on, what would be amazing, what you might, like to explore, but you're not sure about, what you don't want to explore, and just all your turn ons and ideas and what you love and what you like. And that can be such a sexy conversation, like such a turn on. It's like, consent, people, like, have great consenting conversations.
Yes. And we will prove by this that sex is so much more than penetration. So
Oh,
yes, so much more than
totally.
penetration. Don't limit yourselves.
Yeah, so like while everyone's isolated, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of this, right? Like, oh, I can't have someone in person, this kind of thing. And I think there's such a juicy opportunity for people to self-explore, for them to explore different opportunities with people that are not in person. Yeah, like I think there's so much exploration that we can do where we're kind of just moving a little bit past that physical penetration idea and exploring what else is available. I mean, we could go, as far, there's still things that feel penetrative, like energetic sex, things like that. We do not need to be in person to do those things. But there's so many ways, I think, to cultivate intimacy with each other when we still can't be within, what is it, 2 meters, 6 feet?
Yeah, 6 feet. Yes.
From each other. Yeah.
Very important right now to yeah, I find it's very important to look beyond the limitations that we give ourselves. Like you said, this is an opportunity. And heck, I lie in the yard and sink so deep into the sounds of nature. And that, to me, that's very sexual. For someone who's very ecosexual, it's just like, wow, it's like everything is penetrating me. Right. So it's just open, we're talking about opening our minds a little bit and seeing what's there and what's possible. And I think their turn on then is like boundless, the
Oh
level
yeah.
of turn on. And then when we get to the other side of this, and then when you're physically together, how much more amplified that's going to be because of all this beautiful discovery work you've done. We've done. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that you brought up nature. I mean, people laugh at me when I say like I can have orgasms with trees. And they're like, what? I love nature. It's such a turn on. It's such a, but I think that's when we have explored our intimacy and sexuality to the point where we move past seeing turn on as being just that thing uh, between two people that occurs within a sexual situation, and how we define sexuality. Because to me, sexuality is this creative life energy, and it is everywhere. Like, and when you start tapping into it, like, oh my gosh, yeah,
Yes.
it's hard to feel unfulfilled, and it's hard to feel so lonely anymore, and it's hard to feel, um, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Like even when I was talking to Tziporah yesterday, she's talking about, how she's like such an amazing lover now, with, God, the universe, that she's just like, I don't know, like, can a partner, meet this? And I just had a laugh because I'm like, oh, I've totally felt that, where I've just had these just amazing orgasm experiences with myself in whatever setting. And it's like, wow, yeah, like I'm definitely raising the bar.
Yes. 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 But this is where like we come to our sexual experiences resource. Like I don't believe that someone else is responsible for giving me an orgasm. I do not carry that belief anywhere in my body, because I can orgasm simply by breath and sound and movement. I don't, and so I love being met by partners that we come together in that space.
Yeah.
And everything we're talking about here today, I feel is fuels those parts in ourselves. It's like, so if we get all the way to nature, it's like, that's why, because we're so open. And then when we go into maybe physical penetration, we're not as needy, or there's not as many agendas and expectations, but so there's room for more pleasure. There's room for more enjoyment of each other, because we putting our need on the other person. We left that aside.
Totally. And you've expanded your own ability. Because I know as we're saying this, I know that there are a lot of women in the world that are like, wow, orgasming isn't easy for me. And I guess to like anybody that's maybe feeling that and listening, I just would like to say that it's totally possible. Just plant that, that would be a whole other conversation to go into at this point with our timing. But just plant that seed of hope, I guess, and just really invite them to move into a place of discovery around how possible it would be for them to have a more orgasmic experience, to have more pleasure in their body, to have less numbness, to move from the pain to the pleasure. And it's totally possible. And it's something that, I really think needs to be said, because I get a lot of clients that have gone kind of in the medical community, and they can't get helped, and they can't get helped, and they can't get helped. And some treatments are less helpful than, they're more hindering than helpful. I won't go into that, but some of them are. And, they feel really hopeless by the time that they see me. And it's like, there's so much there for each and every person. I totally believe that. And so many ways to experience sexuality too, and to experience orgasm even beyond the genitals. And there's so much there. And so, yeah, I just really want to leave anybody that's watching this that feels like they don't have the capacity to have a really orgasmic experience, to know that they do. And it's just a matter of moving into that exploration, moving into that decision that that is what you're going to start creating in your life.
Yeah. And that orgasm is, I know, like when I speak of orgasm, and I feel I heard you say this, is if I can just leave this piece, is it's so much more than physical orgasm. I actually prefer not physically orgasming, to be honest, because I have such a vast, large ingasm, right? Just a movement and activation of energy, which I think everything we're speaking about are the steps to open up that experience. But I find if we can let go of that limitation, especially in those challenges, it's like, I've had the moments when it's all that expectation on the self, and that
Yeah,
alone can limit the physical orgasm. And then I developed this different connection with my body. And I was like, oh God, I don't want to physically orgasm. I just want to like keep building and building and riding the waves. And yeah, so yes, so much is possible there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
being on today. Is there one thing that, like just one last thing that you'd like to leave anybody with that has maybe been watching this whole time, and just that last sort of succinct thing that might be arising in you?
Yeah. I feel we've covered some vast landscape here today, and how easy it could be for someone who this isn't their norm or used to, and this is different. It can be like, oh, that can't be possible. And I just want to leave people with that. Every small step adds to the whole. And so don't try to take off the big chunk.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to go here and have this orgasm or this grand thing or know how to communicate. But be kind and compassionate with yourself and explore how to take the next small step for you where you're at.
Totally. Yes. It's those bite-sized, I mean, that is really, I mean, if I've learned anything, that's really like how to start moving forward with something, is just taking a small piece that's totally processable. It's totally feels good. And then just seeing how that goes and moving and moving. And then, ironically, you'll end up making some huge leaps without even really realizing it, which is just so beautiful and stunning and powerful. But it happens with a lot more ease. I mean, this is now we're going right back to this gentle, soft piece again, right? But it's like really being gentle with ourselves, really being easeful with ourselves, giving ourselves just bite-sized pieces, which I love that you brought up, because I think in so many ways it goes against the messaging a lot of people are getting from society, the grind, the hustle, you got to like get to the finish line faster and harder and yeah, I really hope that people are taking this as an invitation to move into that gentleness, that softness, that, just incorporating small pieces into their life. Yeah, what a beautiful final thought. I really love that. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great being here. It was fun. Thank you.
Mwah! Have a wonderful afternoon. And yeah, I'm sure we'll talk soon. Bye.
Oh.